Hello, everybody,
Ooh.
and welcome to CLCI Live.
Yes, welcome.
I have something in my eye right now.
Oh no.
Oh no, that's not good.
You could say my eyes were too open because this week we're
Fine.
talking about brainstorming 101, how to be more
Yeah.
open-minded.
So wait, is this a brainstorming session on how to be open-minded, or am I missing something?
I think it's how to be more open-minded so you can have more effective brainstorming sessions. Because if you're not an open-minded person, your brainstorming is not going to go anywhere.
I see.
You go
Okay.
2 feet and then nowhere.
I think it's a
Before we
little
do that,
both too. It could be a little of both.
before we do that, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment on our videos. Interact with us, brainstorm with us, open your minds to us. We want to hear from you.
So who already thinks they're open-minded?
I mean,
the research suggests we all
I
do.
don't know. I don't know if you've noticed my name today.
Very open-minded.
Very open-minded
Oh.
lady.
Oh yeah.
So,
Did anyone outside of Anthony take the test? That was in the.
no, I wish I had.
No, I didn't get to.
You're all
Yeah.
closed-minded people. I think I'm in the middle. Sometimes I'm closed-minded, other times I'm open-minded. It's like depends on my mood.
Cautiously open-minded, probably is what you would say here.
Look, I think you're completely closed-minded, actually.
Okay, that's fine too.
I would go majority at nothing, if nothing else.
Majority, I'm closed-minded. What is being closed-minded?
But I think we all can have our bits of where our closed-mindedness is. We're stuck in ruts and do repetitive behaviors. To me, that's kind of a closed-minded nature.
Mhm. So you mean like routine?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
what does it mean then to be open-minded, and what does it mean to be closed-minded?
To me, open-minded is adaptable,
Mm-hmm.
and or seeking change.
Mm-hmm.
And closed-minded would be not adaptable and not looking to change.
Okay, pretty good definitions.
I know we said, how can you be more open-minded? We maybe should have titled this, maybe you're not as open-minded as you think.
Mhm.
Because that was part of the research here, is all of us coming into this going, I knew that was going to be the case. We're all very open. No, we're open-minded.
Oh, you knew that was the case. Why didn't you keep an open mind
knew
about
that we
it?
would all believe, except for Anthony, perhaps, that we were very open-minded. And I thought, why not pop this in there and then see if maybe we discover maybe we're not as open-minded as we want to believe we are. Possibly. I don't know.
I definitely have my moments of being very tethered to my own thoughts and feelings about things. Yeah.
So I don't know what the test was. I didn't get to see that one. When change occurs, what do you have to do if something just like instantly changes?
You just go with the flow.
Well, that's very open of you, Anthony.
Well, I mean, what else are you gonna do? Like, if a situation changes, you just have to adapt to it. I would prefer routine, and I'd prefer a little bit of forewarning so that I could cautiously sort of approach the situation, look at all sides of it, and then put it in my little boxes of, ideas and or concepts. But if something happens on the fly, you just gotta roll with the punches. You gotta improvise.
Or you can, yell and curse and.
I also do that. I
like
also get mad.
It's a good method.
Curse.
How?
Well, then, go on, Brooke.
So I'm going to ask this question. When was the last time one of you guys disagreed with somebody?
Disagreed?
Disagreed. Yeah.
Probably recent and probably with you. Trying to think of exact. I think I was okay. Here's an example where I was closed-minded and I disagreed with Brooke, and it turned out not to be that bad. Except, well, there was one thing. So, your mom came over yesterday and decided to bring the dog. I was
Yeah.
very closed-minded about bringing the dog, even though she's a very nice dog. I'm like, what about our cats? This house is not equipped to have dogs in it. I don't really want to bother with, a dog here while we're entertaining. Then I was very close-minded about it, but there's really nothing I could do. And then the dog came over yesterday, and it was all fine. She got along relatively well with the cats. She did poop in Brooke's room on the new white
On my
rug.
nice white rug, of course.
No.
If it would have happened in my room, I would have been like, I knew we shouldn't have that stupid dog. But in retrospect, it was fine.
Oh
I
my
did not need to be so close-minded about it. Maybe Brooke should have been a little more close-minded about it. That's one example I can think of very relatively recently.
How about my open-minded folk? When was the last time you guys disagreed with somebody?
Disagree. I'm trying to remember.
I mean, does that mean like letting
Or
them know you
time-
disagree,
A
or does
time
it?
where like you just didn't agree with what somebody was saying.
I had it today.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me.
I was talking to my grandma. She's 90, and she told me that the food that I post on Instagram looks disgusting, and she doesn't know how I can eat it. And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's
I don't know any
hilarious.
fences either.
That's hilarious that you have such strong feelings about like potatoes and vegetables. Like what?"
So what did you tell her?
Yeah,
I
how-
said, "Yeah, well, I'm sure the way somebody else eats is gross to me. That's the way it goes. We're all different, and everybody likes to post what they eat. And I've never done that, so I finally started doing that. And yeah, it's not going to be for everybody."
Jen, you don't need to humble brag how open-minded you are. We're looking for examples where you're closed-minded.
No, I was
Not when you're
very
argu-
open-minded.
Not when you're
she said
arguing with a
that my
closed-minded
food was
person.
disgusting. It was fine. It wasn't even bothered. It was like, that's hilarious.
Well,
But
I can't think of the last time I argued with someone. I'm sure there's a recent time, but I just can't think of it on the
I
fly.
didn't say argue. I just said disagree. Like I don't agree with what you were saying.
We just went through the holidays. We have to have some disagreements here
Good.
somewhere.
I mean, I had one kind of recently, and it wasn't so much that, and I struggled with it a bit, and I ended up having to talk it through. There is a system in place at the studio I work at, outside of here, and that system exists so that when somebody is called off sick or what have you, usually they put in a substitute request, and it goes out to everybody, and we get to whoever answers it first gets that class. And it felt like a fair and equitable system, but somebody had to go out for 6 weeks, and that system got kind of surpassed, right? Like the owner, Allie, who I love dearly, called another person, was like, just take those or do you want to just take those classes? And it happens to be at a time that I love teaching and I love taking classes, and I don't often get the chance to fill in. And I teach Pilates as well, so it's actually better to keep my availability, because Allie teaches at 8:30, so to keep me open and not teaching bar at that time, because if she gets sick, then I'm the only one that can cover her. So there's lots of reasons why she did it, but to me, it didn't feel fair and equitable, right? To me, I was like, this doesn't feel fair to me. Like, like we have a system, and now we're outside of the system. And this is where my neurodivergent brain sometimes struggles with change and things like that. And it bothered me so much that I lost sleep over it more than one night in a row. And it was like, it made me realize I have to just share, like talk about this with somebody, because I tried all of the mental gymnastics of I understand why this is happening. I understand the reason. I've been on the side of being the in charge of the business or what have you, and appointing somebody into a position without talking to other people. I have done, like, I've been in her shoes, and I was trying really hard to be understanding, but at the same time, there was something in me that needed to share my perspective with her and how I was feeling, and also to understand. I asked her, well, if it is something that I would like to do, like to be able to fill in that 8:30 slot, what do I have to do to be considered? Was my question to her. Like, what do I have to do in order to be on that list of people that are considered? And because if it's not be able to teach Pilates, I can't. That's not fair, right? Like, that's not exactly fair to me. And that opens up a whole other Pandora's box. And so there was this moment where I probably could have been more open-minded, but it didn't feel fair to me to be, and I don't know, is that open-minded? Is that what have you? But I was like, the system is there. I want to work in the system. I feel like the system is fair. Let's all abide by the system. You know what I mean? And we had the discussion, and it went great. And you know, I today there was a conversation with everybody on staff about how they're going to use the substitution system from now on, and it wasn't like about I want to get my way, but I don't know, would you call that being closed-minded?
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think I would either. At least not at this moment, not with the way you described it.
Maybe initially, when you didn't have all the information, not really much you could do about it. You know, in the middle of the night, it's kind of closed-minded. But once you started becoming curious and having the conversation and trying to learn more information, then became open-minded. I guess the closed-minded reaction after that, if you went the other way, would have been like, no, this is unfair, yada, yada. You would have went on a tirade, accused people of favoritism.
Yeah.
Without all the information, you just kind of decided on a story and ran with it if you were being closed-minded, but that's not what you did.
So I know I asked when the last time we disagreed with somebody was, but maybe, and we were having trouble struggling with that, but when was the last time you were trying to explain something to somebody and they weren't understanding you or agreeing with you? Can you think of anything in that space?
You should have sent us these prompts earlier.
Oh my God, I know. Racking my brain right now for these answers.
The taxi on that brain. I mean, I have little disagreements with my husband, but I can't think of one I mean, I can't think of anything. He could probably tell you.
I mean, I can think of one that has come up in the office for us.
Okay.
We will sometimes get comments about how people will be like, life coaching is BS. You're ripping people off. You're all of these things, right? Yeah. And a lot of times the punch hit reaction we want to give back is delete the comment, or you don't know what you're talking about, or, you know, all of these things. And it's something where I know I'm on this other side here trying to open up everybody's minds to leave the comment there. This is an opportunity for discussion. This is, you know, it's this is a chance for us to maybe open our minds to find out where they're coming from, listening to them, listen to why they are saying what they are saying, and maybe learn in that moment. But that's definitely, I know from everybody on staff, because I'm normally one of the few that's like, leave the document. let's talk to them. When our gut reaction is to pull the parachute, delete, and run, right?
Yeah.
Some of those comments are just absolute trolls, but doing
So an offense, we're comparing an offense with, but we don't have to be offended either, right?
No.
To be in that position of closed-mindedness.
Not at all.
Like right now, I choose to be as closed-minded as I can about my workout schedule. Because if I don't, I won't go.
I know that, right? Like I understand that completely because it's true. Right?
So, I'm closed-minded about the time. It's got to be that 9:30-ish time frame.
Yeah.
It's really awkward to go after. I can't get my hand to go after, and to go before. It's got to be. I already got to be out and doing something. It doesn't really happen before because it's just my cadence is I got to stick to this so that I don't find any excuses on another day.
So one of
Is
the
there-
benefits of being closed-minded. Then.
I guarantee you there are areas in all of our lives where our minds are closed.
We could
My
flip
mind is
that.
very closed about peas. I hate peas. I will never like peas.
I like peas. I like sweet peas.
I like peas and becoming very disappointed when I
Have you
try.
had English?
You can't just eat peas. Ew. You have to like put peas in a dish.
Yeah, but still, then like the peas will take over the entire flavor, and then I end up like having a bite, and that pea explodes, and now the whole bite is tainted by pea flavor.
Pea flavor, not piss flavor.
Vegetable.
I was just gonna make what Lisa mentioned. She was talking about the closed-mindedness of her keeping her schedule as far as working out is concerned. I think maybe you can flip that and say there's an open-mindedness to the fact that you understand the benefits that's going to result from that. Maybe that's what was running through my head. I don't know. Are you really being closed-minded, or are you open-minded about the benefits of knocking down that?
I think that's probably accurate, Jerome. Good point.
I think so too.
My next question, though, is: are these things inversely proportional? We haven't even defined open-minded and closed-minded. We're making a big assumption that everybody knows what that we mean when we're saying that. I think it's pretty. Obvious.
It's
right?
pretty self-explanatory.
Self-explanatory, right?
Yeah.
Open to possibility, closed to possibility.
Yeah.
These are things. It's interesting. I think having gone through the election we just went through, and hearing about there was it was a CNN something around there, and it was sharing about how more than ever. It was a psychiatrist who treats people who stop speaking to their families. Like that is his specialty. I help people who have recently stopped communicating with their families. And he's like, prior to 2025, most of this people who stop speaking with their families, it's because typically divorce, there's been some kind of rupture in the family, possibly death, fighting over death and where everything goes, and then they cut off their family after that. These are the typical 90% of his cases. And he's like, now coming through my door is people who had differing opinions on the election, who have now severed communication with their families as a result. And he's like, has become this huge uptick. And I even though I have strong opinions one way or the other, there is something in me that has to remind myself to find that understanding and open-minded of the other side. And I think people find in that realm especially it very hard to be open-minded. It really does.
Number one, right, is politics for close-mindedness.
I think politics and possibly money,
and religion,
and religion are real high up there for sure. Although I have met some more recently. I've met some more open-minded religious people, which I think is there's like some progressiveness going in that space. I think younger generations are finding a way to still have a religion and still be open-minded to other people and other beliefs at the same time, which is pretty neat. I didn't know that was possible when I was younger, for sure. So in this space, the reason I'm asking about arguments, the reason I'm asking is I'm just sort of trying to maybe shine little lights on areas where maybe we are more closed-minded than we realize we are. Anthony, where are you closed-minded?
A lot of places. How? Where do I begin? Well, since I'm not the one who just right off the bat said I was closed-minded, and I'm curious about other people's opinions, why do you guys think I'm closed-minded?
I think you think there is a definite right way to do
Yeah.
things,
Yes.
best way to do things, the most effective way to do things, and everything else is probably inferior, less right, less effective.
Is there a reason why
And you
I
definitely
display such behaviors
have a
around certain
way,
people,
you have a
though?
way, your method that you use to figure out what the right answer is. And everybody else's method to figure out what the right answer might be is, in your mind, probably inferior.
Is it possible that I'm closed-minded in certain contexts because I'm constrained to be that way, or am I just a closed-minded person in general?
I don't
Because
know.
I can think of situations where I've been open-minded around some of the people in this office. It didn't really have to concern work at all.
That's true. That's
But when
true.
it does concern work, then it is my job to be the closed-minded person, because if I wasn't, nothing would ever get done.
That's why we have two different channels. One where we could just do what we need to, and one
Yeah,
where
Jerome, in case you didn't know, there is a secret girls-only channel.
Oh no, I knew this. It's been going on for a while now. Yeah.
Talk shit on both me and you.
Oh,
Just in
man.
case.
There's a lot of feelings, a lot of big emotion in that channel. So
Sure.
it's very
It's a closed channel, by the way. It is a private, closed channel, not an open-minded channel. It's a closed channel where people can be biased.
It's where we can get our closed-minded and biased thoughts out in a safe space, and then come back to our sane and open-minded selves and discuss everything else with you guys.
So true. It's so true. We
it's
do
the first
better.
filter.
Yeah.
Our
We do
filter.
better when we get the closed-minded part, the initial judgment, the initial ego. We get that out, and then we do better.
But I think it just appears to be closed-minded in certain contexts. Also, I mean, I am closed-minded in my personal life. I'm not going to deny that.
Anthony surprisingly does surprise me on occasion, though, with being open-minded in areas where I maybe am not. And there's something I enjoy that he surprises me in those spaces, and it's when I'm in those motions where I'm having a emotional reaction or a judgmental reaction, or just I think emotional or judgmental is the best place to put it, and then he will bring a more level-headed and fair reaction, and then I'm like, oh, you're right. Okay, yeah.
Almost as if a person could be more complicated than just being open or closed-minded.
Yes, true story. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I actually think that Anthony's this idea of doing it right, or he is the one that knows how to figure out how to do it right, whatever is going on. I actually like it. I think it's good. I think it makes him good at his job. I'm here for it. I don't have a problem with it personally.
And it's not really finding out the right way. It's more so finding out the efficient, lazy way to do it, and then we'll just stick with it until it becomes until we find something better. We'll adapt and change. But with that being said, how do we bring it back to why being open-minded is good for brainstorming? We can make arguments all day about why being closed-minded is awesome and great and when it's appropriate, but that's not what we're talking about. So I'm closing the conversation.
Well,
why do we want to be open-minded when we brainstorm? That's the question.
Well, I think the open-mindedness helps us create different options and opportunities that we probably wouldn't have come to otherwise.
Yeah. To be open-minded, you're considering things that you've never really touched on before. So that allows you to explore options that you're not used to or the norm.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thinking outside the box, right? That's a lot of times when we're brainstorming, we're trying to think outside of the proverbial box. Uh, and so you have to be open to that, right? That's what you have to open the box. And I think that's very important, especially in brainstorming. I do think there's a fine line, though, and we're going to go over this a little bit next week when we ask the question: is brainstorming even effective at all? But before we get there, we're assuming it is, and within that space, we want to be open-minded. But I have been in brainstorming sessions that have gone wildly off the rails or wildly off topic, or when it just becomes, there is a point where it becomes maybe too far, like, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's just being distracted, but I definitely think that an important part of it's being open with a purpose when it comes to brainstorming, with like a general, which is a lot like coaching, right? With coaching, we're very open, but there is a purpose, and that is set by the client, and then we are very open to what everything else, but then we always have to remind ourselves, return to the purpose, the contract. And I think the same thing goes with brainstorming. You're not bringing everybody in a room just to see who comes up with the wildest idea, although that might be very fun. It might be a great thing to do over drinks with your friends. But typically, you're in a room, you're in a brainstorming session, and there is a purpose, that something that has to come out of that by the end of that brainstorming session.
Jeremy says, are you saying being structured and on time is closed-minded, or if you disagree is closed-minded? I think what we're trying to say is being structured and on time is closed-minded, but it has a purpose, and I'm getting rid of the negative connotation of closed-minded, because you have to put a boundary on certain activities. You have to say that this is still in the bounds of the activity, or this is out of bounds of the activity. So like with coaching, if my client wants to vent for the entire hour without even setting a session contract, that's outside the bounds of the activity. I'm being closed-minded, and I'm saying we have to work on something. We need to have a session contract. If you would like time to vent, we can find the time for it, but it needs to be productive towards what you want to work on in coaching.
Otherwise, you're just being their best.
We can adapt it.
Right.
The same with brainstorming. We can come up with wild and unusual and crazy ideas and have fun, but it still needs to be in the boundary and be a closed system where we're working towards whatever idea or goal we're trying to achieve.
And I was absolutely not inferring that disagreeing with somebody means that you are closed-minded. I think you can absolutely disagree with somebody, absolutely have an opinion about something, or even, in your mind, know what is right or best for you. Mm-hmm. I think where we often get closed-minded when we have disagreements is in our willingness to sit and listen to the other party's perspective, right? To have an open, curious, and I mean, it's an ear that is without an agenda, like a non-judgmental, curious listening when you're in a space of disagreement. And that can be tremendously hard for people. If we go back to this topic of politics, most people, it always ends up being some crazy argument or something. but if everybody sat down and listened and had a curious ear and tried to understand and not have judgment, and not try to change somebody else's opinion. Right? We're not trying to force your opinion on somebody else, but genuinely sit and listen without that agenda. I think that's where an open-mindedness comes in. I think if we start to force our opinions onto somebody else, we're asking them to become more like us, and that is a much more closed-minded communication than just listening and being curious without judgment, and accepting that that person has that belief for whatever reason they have that belief, and it is right and true for them. and it doesn't affect what is right and true for you. And so I think that is a space that is hard for people to maneuver through. I think we're naturally inclined to have our opinions and assume they are the best and wish that everybody agreed with us on some level, right? And it's one of those things where if I hope there aren't kids listening. Like I've always said, I don't want to kill Santa Claus, which can sound, but like, you know, I never want to walk into a room and pick apart somebody else's
Shit on someone's idea.
yeah, just shit on somebody's idea and pick apart somebody else's belief. And like I don't think I think a lot of times that isn't productive. I think what is more productive is meeting somebody where they're at and listening to them and where they're coming from. And I think that's where this open-mindedness comes in. And that's really what a coach does, honestly, is we meet our clients where they're at with a sense of open-mindedness. And we're not there to force anything on them, to change them, to tell them that their opinions are wrong, or that's not what we're there for. We might make observations, we might ask questions around their belief system, but it's up to them to decide what is right for them and what is wrong for them, not for us. And I think the closed-minded space is when we want to start to force our beliefs about somebody else or what somebody else should be doing onto somebody else. That's what every person coming into our classes thinks. I'm going to give advice. Well, what do you think giving advice is? It's a very closed-minded approach to the world.
So, Jeremy, you mentioned something about being judgmental. I think people can be judgmental and open-minded too.
Yes, I was with my grandma. I think she's totally wrong. I think that's a crazy thing to think about the food that I post. But at the same time, I was totally open to it. Like, I wasn't trying to change her mind.
At the same time, I mean, I'm thinking of like the most literal example, like a judge. Probably a good judge is an open-minded judge who is leaving their biases at the door, their preconceived notions, and they are listening to the evidence and making a fair judgment based off of what is coming into the session. Because if there was a closed-minded judge and it was legal, you wouldn't even bother having a trial. You wouldn't even bother listening to the evidence. You would just make the decision and move on. But being a fair, open-minded judge means you're able to take differing opinions, inside, internalizing them, and figuring out what to do with them. Now, luckily, there's a legal framework, which is a bit closed-minded, so you have to come to some sort of decision, and you have to make a decision in a structured way, whether it's brainstorming, coaching, or being in a trial, which is a little bit closed-minded. But I think you can be a judgmental person and still be open-minded and fair as well.
And I think we've done a live on the topic of the difference between being judgmental and having discernment, and also that being judgmental isn't always a bad thing, right? It's we exercise our best judgment all day long. Hopefully. And that I think the word judgment gets a bad rap a lot of times. So that's not what we're saying either, that there isn't a degree of judgment coming in. There absolutely is. I think that's our experience makes it impossible for us not to have some degree of that. I want to be around people that exercise good judgment. The ones that exercise bad judgment tend to leave messes in their wake. So my preference is to be around somebody who is exercising good judgment if possible.
So we've talked a little bit on why you would want to be open for brainstorming, why these are all good things for brainstorming. Other things I have listed, it can build momentum. It enhances collaboration. Like if you are open in a group, a brainstorming group, the people inside the group will feel more welcome and more respected if they're being listened to openly. How do we become more open-minded is a difficult thing, though, because my preconceived notion is that it's kind of a bit of your character. Like you don't really, or mood. For me, it's mood based, but like I don't get to decide how open minded I am at any given point. Sometimes I am open minded because I'm in an open minded mood. Other times I'm closed minded because my brain can only hold so much things inside of it at once, and I just need to close it off and not think about other things at the time. So, yeah, how do we become more open minded in a deliberate manner? Is the question.
So I think there's two answers to this personally. So the first is the coach answer, which is curiosity, right? No matter what is said, how can I be curious about that versus anything else? And then the other thing is just also like, I would call it allowing. Like when my grandma said that to me, I didn't fight it, I just allowed it. So depending on the setting, I think being open-minded could be potentially curiosity, potentially allowing. Thoughts?
So then, is being open minded a passive process or is it like active? Because when you describe it in those terms, it sounds passive. Like I don't have to do anything to be open minded.
I think
I
you
just
can.
let the ideas in.
Depends, I think, what your natural inclination
Yeah.
might be.
But I do believe you can go out of your way to be actively open minded. If you just decide that, hey, this is the day I want to try and be a little bit more open minded than I normally am, I think you're going to have to switch your routine intentionally. Switch things up. Maybe you usually eat, 2 eggs for breakfast. Maybe you switch it to avocado and toast.
Or
Maybe 3 eggs. You could do that. Or maybe you go to the gym in the morning. Maybe instead you switch it to a walk around the neighborhood. Things like that just allow you to
I
think
am
in a
not
different
switching it.
process.
We're not saying you should.
Don't go walk around the neighborhood, Lisa.
It's
Not
just
right now.
a possibility.
It's Arctic weather where Lisa is, by
Yeah.
the way.
I think that in a lot of ways, I mean, barring what we would call nature, or I will just say nature, or whatever is built into us instinctually as people when we're born, we are much more open-minded in the sense that we're much more open to anything that might be possible in the world when we are younger, and it's through our experience that we start to get more and more closed-minded about things. And through our experience over time, we start to close doors. I do think there's some instinct that comes in, hopefully for us, that will naturally guide us. But I think of like my nephew, and in the stories I could tell him that he would believe to be true are probably much more. There's a lot more possibility of that belief than
maybe he has a monkey tail, or that there's a monkey outside of our house waiting to get him.
Exactly.
Stuff like that.
And our experience is what we start to sort of become. Our experience begins to map what we consider to be true or not true, and or false, and what we consider to be right for us and wrong for us and possibly others. And it's through that experience, that learning, what we're told, all of these things that shape us growing up. But I think we are much closer to a blank slate when we're younger. So I think then we have to start to choose as we get older to acknowledge and realize those closed-minded places and learn how to open those up. So I think it is an active process. I do think, though, there are times where I am naive as hell. And in that moment, I am inactively open-minded, right? Because I am just checking my better sense, and I am being naive in that moment. And then I come to learn after, oh my gosh, that was so naive of me. I should have known better. And that's truly probably a moment where I'm being passively open-minded, and maybe not always a good thing. quickly, I love this sort of explanation that Very Well Mind gives. With open-minded, it says open to new ideas and experiences. Closed-minded, not receptive to ideas or not receptive to other ideas. They only like their own. This is where I really like it. It says passionate about their own beliefs is open-minded, but considerate of others.
Mm.
And I like that little.
Be considerate of others. Yeah.
Yes. Passionate about your own beliefs, but considerate of others. And so that's, I think, very much a very healthy, open-minded place to be.
Yeah.
And the opposite would be rigid thinking and refusal to consider others. And then the final, there's 3, empathetic towards others' feelings. And then closed-minded would be insensitive towards others' feelings. That's a big thing we have seen in our culture. I think a big changes that have been happening is people learning to be more considerate of the feelings that people have. I know there are a lot of areas that still have growth, but I think that it's definitely something that I have seen grow and change. Is just people being willing to sit and try to understand the emotions of others or accept the emotions of others a little more than maybe when I was younger, or even in the 60s, where it was very, I mean, if we're looking at gender roles and all of these other things that come up, and how men used to be expected to be unemotional and all, and we've come a long way in that space. And a lot of that, I think, requires open-mindedness that we didn't have before. Thoughts? You're all pensive.
I'm just openly taking this all in.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, but at the time, did we know it was closed-mindedness, or did we consider it discernment in that moment? I think with learning, like you were talking about, Brooke, with learning, I think that can adapt and change over time based on who we are and what our belief systems are, which is saying what you said already. But in that moment, I don't think that people felt that it was closed-minded. I mean, perhaps if we could think of something, perhaps we feel like it is our belief systems that give us the discernment of those places where we feel like this is the way it is. But as time goes on and new information becomes involved, then we get those options and can change what we thought or where we were. Because if we think we're open-minded in that back and then, but we've learned more, does that mean if we weren't open-minded? I don't know about that argument. I just know that we have moved through a new phase of who we are.
We had a limited scope of knowledge and information. So yeah, interesting.
I mean, I think that there is an argument to say that there is some closed-mindedness going on, but I think that a big part of that is the willingness to be open, like to see other sides. I mean, if we go back and we look at culture and we look at history, there are, I mean, you can look at these pivotal moments in history. If we look at like segregation and things like that, and that whole process of, there were people who were much more open and receptive. And then there were people that were fighting it tooth and nail, right? Yeah. And now we're in a whole different place now. Yeah. So there's absolutely a space of closed-mindedness going on. I do think, though, if we look at the reasoning behind the reasons that people are closed-minded, it's typically there is a safety bubble thing type going on, right? There is something about the way things are and what we've been doing that makes us feel safe, even if it isn't right or healthy or good. But we stay in that pattern because we feel safe in it, and it's scary to break out of it. And in order to break out of it, you have to start to open up your mind to other possibilities and that process. And it is a growth moment. And we all have spaces where we get stuck in that closed-minded cycle. And I think for everybody, we have different levels of tolerance for closed-minded areas in our lives and the ability to change them. And I think for somebody that's actively practicing change and growth, and we go through these phases where it's possible for us to have tremendous amounts of growth and change. And those people, I think, are working at it, right? That's not just they wake up one day and like it's work and a process, and it's scary, and it's breaking out of comfort zones. But there are definitely folks who get stuck in the unhealthy, or maybe not the best, but it is the most comfortable. It is the safest. It is what they're used to. It is what cycle for one reason or another. And sadly, some people never break out of that and don't have the ability to for one reason or another, are unwilling to open up and explore new possibility. I know that there are definitely more rigid spaces and people than there are for others. We all have somebody in our life that is more rigid and unwilling to change. And those people are stuck in that closed-mindedness, right? And it's scary to open it up. It's serving them, right? It's serving them. Oftentimes drives us people who are like willing to grow and change crazy. And we have to practice open-mindedness to try to understand where it is they are coming, like why they are doing what they are doing.
So true.
And why are they making the choices that to us seem so obviously not good for them. And we have to come to a place of acceptance of that.
I think is sometimes hard. So if we put closed-mindedness with that behavior, I could see that.
That's super hard.
Yeah. Where, someone is really, there's something that's not right, and it's a proven not right, but they choose to not believe it. And that closed-minded, even though all the facts are there, that for me is where I could probably be closed-minded, because you've got all the facts. I don't understand how you can still go down that path when the facts are
not trust the facts is what I see with some people.
You gotta be open.
Where did that fact come from? How can I trust and then name whatever? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you
Well, but even when there's some originating facts from the originator, the facts come out and someone still chooses to believe something else. That's frustrating. And probably I'm closed-minded to that experience. I would say that that's true.
Jerome, what did you say? I didn't hear what you said.
I was going to say, I think you have to be open to the facts that there might be something deeper there. The facts aren't what matters to them, because they may be going through something else that makes them want to disregard those facts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's true. That's definitely true.
I also know, like in my family, and loving people who have had substance abuse issues, who've had mental health issues, and it can be really hard to love them in those spaces, or the desperate need to change them, tell them how to do things, to get sucked into that cycle. And then there's a big learning there, and I know, Lisa's helped me with this in the spaces where I've struggled with this in my life, of just being able to accept, choosing, okay, I love this person, and I love this person even though they may not get better. And what does that mean, and how do I have to learn to love them that in a way that won't hurt me, but I know that I still want to love them. So like there's a lot of learning in those spaces where we go, okay, this is hurting this person, but how do I just learn to accept that? And it becomes hard. That can be a tremendously hard space to be in, a super hard space to be in. And there's definitely a lot of learning that I've had to do in that, and a lot of internal work. And that was active practice of open-mindedness for sure. And that was that coming in. I know what my beliefs are. I know what my reality is, but I can be empathetic and understanding of somebody else's space and life, and just be willing to accept that instead of trying to force change on somebody. Yeah. Real tough to do. Can be really tough to do. So there are areas where, I think we have to absolutely work to be more open-minded, for sure. And I don't think it's a bad thing.
The work doesn't really stop. It's like an active choice in the moment to be open-minded or to just be the first response, which is usually judgmental.
I mean, I think it becomes a little more easy over time to be willing to open up the ear. I can be somebody that I used to be more capable of being just painfully honest, right? Just painfully opinionated. And I have since learned to just be quiet and listen more. And I find I like that a lot more than, getting in the mix and trying to force my opinions on somebody.
I still like that. I still useful and I like to. Final way that you can be more open-minded, and this is not my opinion, this is from NPR, is doing drugs. Trying ayahuasca or psychedelics. It's what it says at the bottom of the article. I'm just reading it.
Oh my gosh.
Ayahuasca.
I will keep my closed mind. Thank you.
And
it's a way to make your brain more open-minded, and
under the right situation, I'd be totally open to it.
I am not open to it.
Raise your hand if you've done psychedelics before. That's just what it says. So if you don't want to go through the work of active practice of being open-minded, just do some mushrooms. I don't know.
Don't listen to Anthony, please.
Oh my God, don't listen to him.
We do not approve this message.
If it's under the prescription of a doctor.
So we're stopping, Anthony. Stop talking.
Close-minded people.
You're
just people who do not want liability later.
I am just reading from our sources, okay?
Yeah. So, what is your takeaway, Jerome? We're skipping past Anthony.
Hey, that was NPR's suggestion, so liability falls on them. Everybody, I want to say that
now
first.
NPR is going to sue us.
Just kidding.
That's what it says. I'm just reading it
verbatim.
If all else fails, try ayahuasca. Okay, this one certainly isn't for everyone, but hear me out.
That's hilarious.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Jerome, what was your final thoughts?
I don't know. I'm thinking about that now, and I'm like, I'm not totally against that one there. Well, I am afraid of ayahuasca. I heard that's crazy. But I guess kind of like what Brooke said, yeah, under the right circumstances, maybe. Yeah, I can't really think of anything right now.
Jen?
I think I realize that I like some of my closed-minded parts of me, and I'm not going to be changing them. I realized that in this conversation. It's like, yeah, I can be totally open-minded. I'm a coach.
Except the things that I don't like and that I'm closed-minded about. I will never change.
Oh my gosh.
I'm good and it's okay. But what we said earlier about being able to be passionate about something while still, what was it, like holding space for someone else's opinion, I can do that all day. So I'm good.
And I think that's an important distinction to make. Like you can be passionate about who you are, your opinions, and what works for you, and then still be capable of understanding and being accepting of other people's opinions. And I think that's where there's this really like higher communication sort of space comes in, is when you can get into a space where people are, you know, accepting and curious, and they just want to learn from each other, and they're not there to force anything on anybody, but they're there to just sort of be curious and understand more. I think there's something very cool and special and maybe idealistic about that, but I like the idea of being in a room with the people that can do that and having, you know, sort of fun, open discussions.
You know what coaching has taught me about being curious? It has
What?
taught me how to be curious about things that I'm not actually curious about. I'm telling you, there are times when, you know, it's a topic or something that normally I wouldn't touch, like in my personal life, in my, you know, like in any other situation. But as a coach, it's like, I don't know. I've just learned how to be curious about even the things that I would choose not to be in any other situation. And that is actually very cool.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, we're going to wrap it up, right?
No other final thoughts from anyone?
Anthony?
Nope. I'm all.
No, yeah,
spent.
you already
My
gave
brain's
your.
spent.
You be quiet.
That wasn't my final thought. But sure, I'll be done. I'll stop talking.
I think it's like the silver lining, though. I tend to look for a silver lining in discussions and conversations for the most part. That's not to say that I'm not human, for sure.
All right.
That should wrap it up then. Thank you all for joining us for CLCI Live. Next week, we're going to talk about, is brainstorming even worthwhile? Is it a waste of our time to even try to brainstorm?
There's people who abhor, they hate, they loathe brainstorming and call it just a complete waste of time. So we're going to dig into those spaces. Yeah.
I can see how it's a waste of time.
What if we come to the conclusion that it is a waste of time and these
And we just have to delete these videos.
Yeah.
Then we have to be open-minded.
It's okay. We can come to
But we had to brainstorm to figure that out.
We have to first know about the brainstorming. Yeah.
This is going to be an exciting live, because we potentially are going to be coming to that, you know, point of no return with this topic.
We should save it for the last one, really, and then be like,
we are. We're ending brainstorming at 3. And then we're going to be doing a coaching tools the week after that. I don't
on the
know
28th.
Yeah, if you check the CLC Live channel, it's all in.
Okay, so like, subscribe.
We're going to be doing improv on.
Improv is
okay, that's fun.
Yeah, I like that.
We can do some improv games. Okay, thank you all for showing up. Like, subscribe, share, comment. If you want
Join our
to
classes.
be more open, take our classes. Be open.
Sure.
Open your wallets now.
Okay.
Give us
Oh my
money.
God.
Classes.
Yes. All right.